Give us your soul and join the Legion.
We are talking The LAKSMAN from 2026. This is directed by Sierra Clark. Now, this is a low-budget slasher movie that takes place in one of these haunted attractions. And we've seen a few of these settings be used as horror films. Here's another one. So the story is that there is a kind of out-of-the-way, middle America somewhere, kind of haunted hayride attraction. And we presume that at some point in the late 18th century, there was some type of occult shenanigans going on. We see a prologue where a black guy is lynched, and there's like weird sort of lightning and things. So we presume that supernatural stuff is happening. And then we cut to modern era, I guess, and the variety of people are turning up to this kind of haunted attraction, but there seems to be a robed killer, possibly supernatural in origin, going around and killing the guests. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. Let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? I kind of like the look of the killer here. He's kind of like this, kind of almost like like a Satanist looking sort of character with like long robes and like a hood and stuff. And, you know, he's kind of strolling around the woods, and I quite like the way they've kind of lit him. He's got this sort of light that almost that follows him, and it's just obviously, you know, light lit from below, but nonetheless, I still kind of quite like the effect, and it's, you know, low budget, but I thought it kind of give him this mysterious kind of aura sort of type thing. And, you know, it's you're unsure whether he's sort of supernatural or of origin, or if he's just a guy. As the movie goes on, you'll kind of learn a little bit more about it. But I sort of quite liked, you know, the look of that. And I think to a degree there's always a fun time to be had in a way where we have these haunted attractions, because it's a good excuse why people are, you know, if they see this guy who really is like some type of killer, why they're not running away from him, because they just assume that it's, you know, it's part of the attraction. So it's a good conceit for a killer to hide in plain view to a large degree, and that's kind of pretty fun. So, you know, there's some kind of fun to be had. I mean, it's a sort of a low budget affair in regards to this haunted attraction, but there it is. There's a relatively high body count in the movie. None of the kills are particularly sort of gratuitous or anything like that, or particularly complex. It's more just like an axe to the body and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it's still, there's numerous people kind of get diced up. So, you know, reasonable body count if you like you know, a slash. And I do think in some ways the way this movie plays out does feel like a bit like a kind of retro slasher in some ways. You know, it's this, all these teenagers getting chased around the woods by this kind of like this masked maniac with an axe, and it sort of feels a little bit like that sort of slasher style from, you know, the 80s really. So if you're a fan of that sort of thing and you don't mind the low budget, you may well get on with this movie. Now, I will say, this is going to be a bit of a two sides of the same coin here. I don't think the acting is bad per se. That might sound like you know, weird the way I'm saying it, but I don't think the acting is necessarily bad. I think the actors here do an alright job. But I think there is a problem in the fact that this movie, the way it is put together, most of the time our characters that we have on screen are screeching at each other. We primarily follow this kind of group of teenagers, and then the proprietor of this kind of theme park, I guess, who is this woman called Betty Ray, and she is constantly sort of just sort of having a go at people, complaining at people, shouting at people, and then the teenagers are just sort of arguing amongst themselves. And although I don't think the acting is necessarily bad, this constant kind of grating like whinging characters that we have perpetually through this movie becomes annoying. And the characters are very thinly sketched out. You don't really ever feel you know anyone, so you can never really buy into their plight, so to speak, because they are just, you know, lambs to the slaughter ultimately. No one here really has any type of character depth. So all we get are these, you know, various characters screeching, screaming, arguing, complaining, pretty much any dialogue in this movie. So it's, yes, the acting isn't bad, but what the actors here are told to do, I have to say, doesn't particularly make for compelling viewing. I'm also a little confused about the lore of this movie. You know, we have this scene at the beginning about this black guy getting lynched. And then we see it like in modern times, it's like a black guy who gets kind of fired from this, you know, haunted attraction. And then we have this robed figure who's sort of wandering around with this kind of glowing amulet. Okay, so what's actually going on? You know, it's like, I don't really feel the movie does the sort of work to, all right, it's supernatural stuff, I guess, and that's it. Yes, there's this glowing there's this glowing amulet, there's this box. Why? Where's it come from? What's it do? Why is it doing it? Why is it, I mean, okay, is the killer some type of spirit from this guy who was like murdered in the past? You know, is he taking revenge on the descendants? Why is he just killing random people? It doesn't really ever make any sort of sense. Okay, he's just a random killer, but then why have this sort of like, this setup at the beginning of the movie? Just have him like a random. We didn't need that sort of like that setup in that case. It doesn't really make any sense. And even whatever the motivation is, the way he's doing it, like, okay, so what is the power here? Where does this come from? We just don't know. So I really felt this movie left a lot on the table in regards to the actual lore. And to be honest with you, it is just people walking around in the woods when it comes down to it. You know, all kind of pretty much filmed at night. Lots of people walking around in the woods, screeching at each other, with a killer who you don't really know why he's doing it or what powers he has or where's this power come from. So this is all really kind of just vague and sort of, you know, nondescript, I've got to say. So I have to be honest with you, although I don't think this movie is like poorly filmed necessarily, and it has some interesting aesthetics, it just has no substance to it. I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 10. Sadly, it's a little bit of a, you know, a chore, unfortunately. What were your thoughts of using it? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing it next time.
Subscribe to Geek Legion of Doom before the machines take us.